Hey guys, it's Jay. Before we get into this episode with Rip, which is really incredible and amazing, and the story that he and his family have walked through is incredibly difficult but incredibly powerful. I wanted to give a quick trigger warning before we even got into it because we are going to be dealing with a pretty sensitive topic. Rip's family went through a tragedy about 15 years ago or so, where they lost one of their children in a drowning accident. I wanted to make sure that I hopped on here and really gave you all just a forewarning that we are going to deal with that. But more than anything, what we're going to deal with and what we're going to talk about is their journey towards healing and their journey of finding God in the midst of incredible pain and just all the amazing restorative things that the Lord's done. So if you can push through it, there's some real gold here. But if not, I don't want anyone jumping into this episode without knowing what we're going to be talking about. So, with that said, if you choose to listen through, you're going to find some really great tools for dealing with pain and trauma and finding goodness where everything hurts.
Pain is never permanent unless we protect it. So Jesus went straight through the cross. And then he rose up 3 days later. It's not permanent, but it will last as long as we protect it. And if we do, we're enslaved to it.
Welcome to Sacred and Strange.
Welcome to Sacred and Strange. I'm Jay, I'm your host, and today we've got a follow-up with my good friend Rip Wahlberg. Rip was on a few weeks ago, and we wanted to do a follow-up about a book he wrote that's really important. I will say, disclaimer up front, today is probably a little bit heavier than some of our other ones, but it's really important. Rip and his family have walked through just probably every parent's worst nightmare and come out the other side. And I will say, having read it now, I thought I knew this story and really found out I didn't know this story. And man, you're one of my heroes. I don't like I don't have necessarily any words to put into it other than that. Just the resilience and faithfulness and realness. And I am excited to get into it. And again, I think it's important. It's one that I think the church needs to hear more of, especially the charismatic church. With that, man, why don't you just kick it off? Tell us a little bit about what inspired the book and all that you guys walked through, going all the way back to, was it 2008?
Yeah, 2008. Yeah. The date would be 678. So yeah, that's how I remember it. So yeah, thanks, man. It's good to be back with you. And thank you for having me back. Even though it's a bit of a heavy topic, I'm glad to be here and talk through it with you and share the story. And the hope is that just by being open, transparent, and vulnerable with our story, that people can connect to their own pains and maybe hopefully decide to risk taking their pains to God and seeing God's faithfulness. But the book is called Shattered: Surviving and Thriving After the Worst Pains of Life. And I don't think I've ever done this, but I guess shameless plug, like available on Amazon and Life Rich Publishing and all that good stuff.
Yes. Buy several copies. And
Buy several copies. However, and I'll say it on the front end, if to buy it on Amazon, don't just search Shattered. You're going to have to search Shattered and my name, Rip Wahlberg, because most likely it's buried deep enough among other books that you'll have to search my name and put the two together. It speaks to how well known of an author I am, but it is definitely there. Yeah, it's the story of us losing our son, Aiden, who was 4.5 years old, to a sudden drowning accident on a beautiful June afternoon in Connecticut back in 2008. My wife, Annemarie, had taken all 5 of our kids back up to Connecticut for an end of the school year celebration trip to go see some friends. We had moved down here to Pennsylvania 2 years earlier. So she went back to see for a long weekend to see a bunch of friends, and they were hanging, having the most perfect day in our friend's pool. And all of a sudden, wait, where's Aiden? And like at a pool, all the kids, and then one's not there. And so their worst nightmare happened because he was about maybe 15 feet away in their hot tub. And somehow he had just slipped through everybody's view and just slipped past there for probably a moment. And then that was it. And he somehow got caught, like stuck in the middle where it would be over his head. And that was it. So I was home, I was working in the addition we had been building, and we were hanging hottest day of the summer. My close friend and my father-in-law, we were all hanging sheetrock in the addition in the garage, and my phone rang, and it was Annemarie. And you just get so caught up in work, I almost didn't take it. I'll call back, but I took it and stepped outside from the garage, and she just said straight away, she's come to Connecticut right now. Aiden just drowned. And they were literally working on him while she said that. And my mind had to catch up. What did you just say? I don't get this. So I'm going, what's going on? What? And she just said, he drowned. The EMTs are here. They're doing CPR on him. He's not responding. You got to come to Connecticut now. And it's like everything in your world just explodes. And you're trying to process. You get the overwhelmed thing happens immediately. And my brain starts saying, but just revive him. That's what they do on TV, and that's what they do in the movies. And you're just so overwhelmed. It sounds ridiculous to say it. It's almost funny, but of course it's not. Like, they do that on TV. Just do it. Yeah. And so I said, all right, I'll be right there. I brought my stuff into the garage. I walked back into the garage. My father-in-law and my friend Dave were there, and I didn't even talk to them. I just fell down on the ground and screamed. And of course, they're just shocked because it wasn't a short one. It was a very long scream. And I got up, walked into the house, and I can't remember if I changed like my shirt or my shorts. I changed one of them and left the other, grabbed my keys, a wallet, and I think I just left. And I walked back down, and I just said to them, I have to go to Connecticut right now. Aiden just drowned. Just like that. Just no more explanation. In my truck. I probably was gone in 3 minutes. And I drove over to the gas station, had to get gas, no money. We had nothing at this point. Like, we were so tapped out of everything with a young family and all. And I was getting gas, and I'm looking around at people, and there was one thought, and it was, these people have no idea that are also here, that my life just exploded. And by exploded, this is why the book is called Shattered, because it feels like and felt like glass, that your world just broke into a million unfixable pieces. Like, you don't get this back. And it was at that moment, and God said, he spoke to me as the first time among a few, and he said something like, just get yourself to Connecticut and get there safely. You will not have to pay for a dime of this. I will take care of this. And what was really amazing was, like, there was some massive expenses, but people were so kind. There was funds that were, this was before GoFundMe. Like there people gave, they set up some things somehow. I don't even fully know how. And people just gave, and from all kinds of places. Individuals gave, churches gave, church organizations gave.
Wow.
And just supported us in all kinds of ways.
That
Yeah.
was one of the amazing parts I found so your book's split into 3 sections. The 1st
Mhm.
part tells the story from the day, the week, the year. And one of the really amazing things that stood out to me in the first section, and shows up in the third too, I think, with those testimonies, is the community that rallied around you guys
Yeah.
was significant.
Yeah. It was incredible. I said it in the very beginning of the book. I listed like the people to say thank you to. And one was our whole neighborhood, because even our whole neighborhood, best neighborhood anywhere. And if you're friendly in your neighborhood, then you feel like that, everybody feels that.
Yeah.
And we were really incredibly blessed. Like our neighbors came together and they supported us like with meals for an entire summer. Usually you're pregnant and you're this, that, and you get meals for, I don't know, 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
This was
all lasagnas.
Yeah, exactly. And this was like 3 months, like into September, from June into September. But when I look back at it, as crazy as it sounds, we hardly had capacity to do anything. I think I went out and started working again. I know I did. But in fact, like that was all I could do. Like just to get through that. And you just had no capacity. It was that, like, the loss is just that intense. And I'm not trying to embellish it. I'm just saying it seems like a lot, but we were incredibly blessed by such a wonderful group of neighbors and church family and other people that were so kind and considerate to help us. Not to say we wouldn't have gotten through, but that people were so kind to help come along and shoulder this kind of load. Oh my gosh. I still don't really have words. Thank you is still not quite sufficient. Yeah. Very impressive.
It was, yeah. And it was, at least you didn't really get into too much of it until later on, but it was action was what you described. And it wasn't just people showed up, they dropped off a casserole, gave us a card, and I'm sure that happened, but it was like your neighbors, church family, people in Connecticut, like your pastors moved into your house for the first week.
Yeah, they did. They did. They literally moved into the house. Christy helped Annemarie get dressed, get out of bed even. It was that intense. Yeah, my mom died when I was 13, and that didn't compare to this. And both were actually traumatic. Not well, we knew, and it was a long journey. It was, both were that fast. And this was like living here in our house the first week was like everything was quiet. Everything was whispers. We talked kind of like just in whispers, because not that we didn't try to tiptoe around Annemarie, but this hit Annemarie in her own way. Like it blew her world apart. I've never thought about this, but I think for me, it blew my world apart. And I'm going to say this, it didn't blow my faith apart. And I don't mean this in any condescending way. I mean it to say what I'm going to say as like, this was her journey and the way that it affected her, not that she's anything less, because she got through it. Even still, it blew her world apart, and it probably blew her faith up too, because the way she walked with God didn't have much of a grid to hold that together. So everything she thought she knew about God got completely blown apart.
Do you think Aiden had to do with not to compare, I'm not trying to compare traumas or whatever, but do you think some of it had to do with the fact that she was there when it happened?
Yes, for sure, because it did it differently. If we were reversed, it still would have really worked her. It probably would have blown her faith apart too. But the thing that she wrestled that I didn't was that she wrestled guilt. And she wrestled voices of guilt and all that,
Yeah.
that she failed, that she not caused it, but that it happened on her watch. So she carried guilt from that. And the only extent of guilt that I carried was I would envision my son in that moment and thinking, well, where's my dad? Why isn't my dad saving me? And so that got me for a couple months, but it was nowhere near as intense as this, how Annemarie must have had to walk through that, her own, I think, guilt of on my watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I sat down at the pool in the middle of the night or early the next morning, like before sunup. I sat down at the pool and was looking at the hot tub feet away. And everything was calm and still and perfect and beautiful. And I'm like, you're trying to put together all these things. This is beautiful, and tragedy happened here hours earlier. Like, your mind just doesn't put together, it can't hold those things too easily. But yeah.
Man, as a dad, like I remember when we had Judah, our oldest.
Mm.
I think I've shared this with you before, but when we had him for the first 2 weeks, I was convinced he was going to die in his sleep. It was just this intense fear that would come on me. And I think some of it was attached to when I was little. I was deathly sick for a few days. My mom had a lot of, I think, stress and anxiety even when she was pregnant with me, because she wasn't supposed to have kids. Doctors told her all kinds of stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that was maybe some generational stuff or whatever. But for 2 weeks, I was convinced. I remember we were still in California. I sat in the Target parking lot and I called my dad. And it was the first time that I think there's something that happens when you vocalize the fear and the pain that you're in, and you
Mm-hmm.
stop holding it in. I
Yep.
remember I called him, and it was like this. You describe it in the second section, the catharsis thing, but it was like I started to speak, and this, I don't know, guttural, just I couldn't hold it back anymore, started to come up out of me, and
Mm-hmm.
I started crying, and he was like, I don't want to say he said the Christian thing, but he basically was like, God loves him even more than you do. He's watching out for him, all this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, I was like, okay. But there was something about even just vocalizing it and getting the emotion of it out, that after that moment, I was like, I was okay. And you described, I think, a few of those moments, not that you were okay or whatever, but you described a few of those moments, even from the going back to visit his grave, or when you guys were seeing him in the funeral home and taking turns of going back and forth. And was that just instinctual, essentially, having to get the emotion out? Because I've seen a lot of people walk through tragedy where it's like they don't lean into those feelings, they don't lean into those emotions, and they shut down, or they do the bypass thing that we'll talk about a little bit later, I think. But it's a kind of a stupid question, but how did you know to just, I have to bring this out and I have to get it out?
Yeah. I'm going to say it like this. I'm not any kind of super Christian. And I know that may sound even a little weird to say that. I want to preface it that I'm not trying to impress anyone. That approach felt natural. That's the best way to say it. Somewhere in the summer, they had provided a therapist for us. And so the kids met with a therapist for children. Annemarie met with her. I met with her. We met individually. And she said, maybe we met with her together too. And she said to us, like, you're going to need to go to the pain. And Annemarie was like, what? Why in the world would I do that?
I can hear her saying.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you can. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't have the stuff that I put in the book, but it made sense. So like I would put a slideshow on my computer and play it to a song that I found. And I would just I'd sit down here in my office and just let it start. And I'd let that emotion build. And I thought it would erupt and be overwhelming and never end. And yet what I found was that when I did that, it would be a slow build of emotion and it would get very pregnant and then it would erupt. And I thought it would go on for 30 minutes or an hour. And literally it went on for probably 2 to 2.5 minutes, which is not a long time, but to do that straight is actually a pretty long time.
Yeah.
But it's not actually long. And what that showed me is that the feelings that we have to get out, they're not actually going to overwhelm us. We just think they might. So if we can trust going to it, it's not going to kill us. It's not going to overwhelm us. It's not going to be never ending. We have to diffuse it though, like a pressure cooker, or else it will stay in us and do bad things.
Yeah.
It'll do physically bad things. It'll do emotionally bad things to us. And we will inevitably make decisions from the pain that we've internalized. And eventually we won't even know what pain is there, and we'll be making bad decisions from it. And so I did stuff like that. I would go to his grave often whenever I felt that I needed to or wanted to. I would go to his grave and I would just hang out there, literally sit. In essence, I'm sitting on top of where he is, and I'll look at his headstone and I'll just sit there. And here's the interesting, like the beautiful part of it now, I don't remember the last time I went. And in fact, it's a good thing, at least for me, that's not a bad thing. That's a perfectly acceptable thing. I think it's very normal. I also think it's rather healthy because I've done the work, and eventually the work will be over. But if we don't go do the work's always going to be there to have to get done first. And so I went and did the work. And I think that's what helps us get through healthy. It's dirty, it's messy, it is painful, it hurts. It's to say it's not fun is understating it. But it is important and it's worth it. Yeah, I'd spend hours. I would do the same thing. I would take my computer to the grave and I would watch that slideshow and I would just cry my eyes out. And I would be there for a couple hours at times and sometimes less, but just do the work. And like I say it in the book in different ways, but you basically got to have the emotions that are there until they've exhausted themselves and you just run out of the emotion, because that's one interesting thing about emotions. They will exhaust themselves and it stops. And so sometimes it'll build again and I'll make the space to diffuse it again. Now, both Annemarie and I can sit and talk, and we may get choked up and we know what it is, and we'll just have the moment. We'll have it in front of each other. It won't matter. And we'll chat about it, or we'll laugh and cry in the same moment.
Yeah.
Now, because now we're past the work.
Yeah.
So
scarred but healed.
Yeah. Yep. And I would say, I don't even think we walk with a limp in that way. I think we walk with a limp in other ways, meaning I think when I'm probably bringing this in and it's not necessary, but like when I think I just said that word, that phrase, because never trust a leader without a limp was in my head. And so we've got scars is like the limp, but it's in that thing with Aiden, it's a scar.
Yeah.
It's not anything worse.
I think one of the things that was striking me so much in reading it was obviously know you guys, been to the house many times. I didn't even realize that tree on the side of your house, that maple tree, is Aiden's tree.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's right out in front of me here. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. So it was like discovering some new things, but I didn't realize how close in time his passing was to. I always had it in my head, like when we met you guys, which I think was in like 2012, because I think it was about
12 or 13. I think 13.
something
maybe.
like that. It was before Aaron and I were married. I think shortly before we were married.
Yep.
And thinking this had been like 10 years.
Mm.
And not realizing
already.
how close, not realizing how close the gap actually was.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that and then looking back, because I remember, especially Annemarie, but I remember you guys, like seeing you guys doing the work too.
Annemarie, that the tree out there, it's big now. It was put in, like 2 guys from the township put it in. And because it's 10 feet off of our house right here, but it's, or 12 feet off of our house, but it's on township property. So the township bought that was one of the things, like the township bought the tree. The township planted the tree and everything. And it would have gotten planted in that fall. And then December 20th is Aiden's birthday.
Yeah.
And so that very first 6 months later, the tree had been in the ground and roped up for like maybe 2.5 months. And it snowed out. And I was downstairs on the 20th, the first birthday with him not here. And I'm grieving it and doing something here in my office. And I was like, where's Annemarie? And I heard these weird, I know now, like it was wailing outside. She had gone outside and was like just out in our side yard there. And she was just out there crying her eyes out underneath the tree. She had dug down like this much snow and found the plaque that has his name on it sitting under the tree and just was like crying. And she would prefer not to do that. And even then, especially would have preferred not to, but it was like uncontrollable.
That was another moment too that was interesting because your neighbor came out with her.
Yeah, Michelle came out too. Yep. So they're both there crying. Michelle's being supportive and wanting to be supportive, and Annemarie was there. They're both there crying, just having to get it out. Yeah. But the tree is awesome. We love the tree.
Yeah,
That's crazy. It's just.
I was thinking about Addie's graduation last summer when we were over there and being like, now knowing that, looking back, it was like, oh, it was like Aiden was there.
Yeah, yeah. We had. It moves ahead from the book, but this past year, Aiden would have turned 21 this past December. And so we were all over at Kaylee's house and we were watching old family videos that Blake got digitized. And Aiden was in those and the kids were in them and stuff. And we were just having a great time as a family, hanging out, watching this of who we were, whatever, closer to 20 years earlier and stuff. And Annemarie and I went away sometime 6 months earlier than that, in 24 or 23. Now I honestly forgot. And what I did was we went away for a weekend and I read the book to her so she could read the book because she didn't want to read it alone because it still was a little too, like, even then was like, this is just close to home. I don't know if I want to. So could we do this together? I thought, well, that's really beautiful. So yeah, let's do this. So I read the book to her and she read along with me. And, but I read it out loud and we would chat and stop and share our different perspectives from back in those moments or forward to something. And then we watched these videos just ourselves for the first time. And it was something like, by that time, it was maybe 17 or 18 years. 6, 5. Yeah, it was probably 17 or 18 years at that point. And I read or hadn't seen Aiden in motion. And I thought I remembered his voice, but it was a little different. But it was so familiar once I heard his voice. It was different. My memory has changed it a little bit. And then it was totally familiar. And then looking at him and stuff. So even then we cried.
Sure.
We cried, we smiled, oh my gosh, look at him, and so on. It's a mix. But what we do, this is one of the big takeaways I had, was that if we stuff our pain, it's a very human reaction to avoid the pain and not go after it, not go to it. I use the phrase like go to your pain. But if we avoid it, it'll start to come out sideways. But if we have it, what it does is the healing is not losing the memory of it. The healing is no longer being triggered as if we were in the moment again.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. Like when we have trauma and all that kind of stuff, whatever kind, when we want to avoid it and we haven't dealt with the issue, then we remain triggered.
Yeah.
And God's healing is not to take away as if it never happened. God's healing is just that we're not triggerable. So like I don't get taken out and I don't have an emotional response that's so massive as if it happened yesterday. When I have an emotional response, I can go about my day.
Yeah.
A moment when I have it now. And it doesn't bother me to talk about it. It won't take me to, I won't lose sleep when we're done. And the whole thing is what I tried to get across in the book in the various ways of how I wrote it. It's got those 3 sections. I tried to pretty much communicate God is the answer. And our best choice is to trust him with our pain and go have it with him.
Yeah.
Whatever way that looks like, go have it with him. You can do it one-on-one. You can do it meaning one-on-one alone with him. You can do it with a therapist. You can do it with a pastor, whatever. But he's capable to heal our souls of all those, of our worst stuff. And there's nothing that is beyond his ability.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I remember from when Aaron and I were out at Bethel and during that time was Bill Johnson spoke this message once talking about his experience going through stuff with his dad. This is before Benny had passed and all that stuff. But just talking through the stuff he went through with his dad passing of cancer and how many, people they've lost to cancer. And which may be surprising for people who think Bethel's all just good stuff as far as only talking positivity. But I remember him talking this message and he talked about how Jesus says that he would send the comforter, who's the comforter is Holy Spirit. Why does he call it the comforter? What he's talking about his death, the grieving in the morning that they're going to go through. in his death, and he talked about how it's a unique facet of God as comforter that we only get to experience when we come to him to be comforted. And that doesn't mean comfort isn't, I'm going to make everything feel good. It's sit with you.
Yeah.
I get to bring an offering of my pain to you.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to do that on the other side of this, when in the kingdom where it says there is no weeping and mourning and all that.
No more sorrow, no more sickness, no more pain. Yeah. So we look forward to that hope,
Yeah.
and we look forward to that with hope. But right now we have incomplete, and right now we have imperfect. And so, yeah, I agree with that. Like that, I guess we talk about that as like putting on masks. And I tried to identify ways that we mask our pain. It could be with busyness. It could be with a substance. It could be, I think I used the word inebriate our pain. And it doesn't mean just with a substance abuse. It's inebriate it with is just the word to numb it and avoid it.
Yeah.
And so we don't feel something else, so we don't feel this.
Escape.
And escape it. And so without that, we have a really weak profession of faith, quite frankly, based on what you're saying. Because if we avoid the pain, we can't bring that to Jesus and find, as in discover it, find, as in experience his comfort. Oh, I would have never thought that God would have been willing to sit with me while I went through this.
Yeah.
And never say a word. I would have thought God would have been upset with me for not being faith-filled enough. So I thought I have to just muscle through it or just tough my way through it and not allow myself to be broken in front of him, which is, quite frankly, the thing he's most willing to do. Like, he's willing for us to be broken before him.
Yeah.
And I find that he doesn't rush us through it. It's one of the things I said in the book. He doesn't rush us through it.
Yeah.
He lets us have it until it's done, which is precisely what needs to happen. It's the most effective way to get through stuff. Have it until it's through. And what I call it otherwise is speaking truth to pain. And I feel like what we look at in the biblical record is that when we speak truth to pain, we're abusing people, quite honestly. And that may be like a strong word, I get it, but we can't just gauge ourselves out of our intentions. We have to be willing to acknowledge the impact of our actions. And we can't just excuse ourselves and say, well, I meant well.
Yeah.
By speaking truth to someone's pain, because it still causes them pain.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help them. So it's good to mean well, but a more compassionate thing at the moment is to keep our mouth shut and just let them have it.
Yeah.
In whatever way that is, whatever ugliness that is. Sorry, I might be jumping ahead a little bit.
No, you're good. You're good, man. Because I think you're hitting to the point of, we would call that spiritual bypassing, the cliche things that people say, what Christians say when they're uncomfortable. And for whatever reason, at least I don't know if I don't want to say it's completely universally Christian, because I think some denominations or even Catholics tend to maybe have a better theology of pain sometimes. But it is widespread enough to say that's like the spiritual bypassing thing of, we get uncomfortable when the thing we're seeing doesn't fit the narrative of God only blesses. And that's true. He does bless, but sometimes that blessing also looks like sitting, but I'm going to sit with you. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to hide this peace. And it's I think we we misrepresent Christ to an extent. And sometimes I wonder if it's why non-Christians, because honestly, a lot of non-Christians do this better than us.
Hmm?
Look at us like fake, like we're fake. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
we live in this la la land.
Yeah. So for one, yeah, especially, I'm going to say, especially the charismatic world that you and I have walked in rather a lot in the last number of years. I don't think they do this well, but I also find other evangelical streams don't do it well either. Less spirit-filled streams, less Pentecostally streams still don't do it well. I find that funerals themselves are precisely the area that I think is highly unrelatable to the non-Christian world. Because when, like, it was suggested that we have a celebration of life for Aiden, and I said straight away, no, absolutely not. This is a tragedy, and we're not going to have a celebration of life for him. We're going to honor God fully, but I'm not going to celebrate this tragedy. Because so what we do is when we have a funeral, and it doesn't have to be just the tragic child dying, it's anybody. We leap over the grief. We almost all but avoid the grief. And we speak of the future hope of they're in a better place. We will see them again. We hope in the resurrection. And we say all these things that are true without having the grief.
Yeah.
And I just don't, when I do funerals, I try to express that is acceptable. I get to the future hope, but I try to make space to encourage people and allow them permission to acknowledge their grief, because God tells us we can in more than one place in the Bible.
Yeah.
And especially,
right, he's a man of sorrow.
He's a man of sorrows, acquainted with. He wept for his friend Lazarus.
Yeah.
There is a time for laughter and a time for mourning.
Yeah.
And all of them are acceptable under the sun.
Yeah.
Each has an appropriate time. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
How about just blessed are those who mourn, they will be comforted.
Exactly. Out the red letter words.
Yeah.
Blessed are those who mourn. Not don't mourn because you got to be a faithful believer.
Yeah.
The blessing too is, what does it mean, blessed? Well, I think the blessing is that when we do mourn, we're comforted by him. Yeah. Is, I think, the blessing in itself. So there's just so many. And if we wanted to take more time, we could rattle off even more. Yeah.
I just wonder your thoughts on how much of that is dogmatic, how much of that is whether it's bad theology or just poor teaching, and how much of it, because I do think in some ways too, some of that, it can stem even off of just the Western culture, have to have everything put together. Mm-hmm. So I do wonder, is it almost like a double-edged sword in a lot of ways for us here in, at least in the States or Western society, of the churches tell you put on your Sunday best, have a good face on, and the culture is also telling you stay strong.
Yeah.
So
I think it's cultural. I think it's like a three-pronged thing. I think it's cultural, theological, and generational. Because the generation that was leading when I grew up definitely put that idea forward. But they did it in a way that was like, it was just part of the culture. It was the way they were. They didn't they really didn't, you didn't have time to sit there with your emotions.
Yeah.
And they didn't think about it. And I think there was you mix that together with theology, like just, hey, yeah, but I'm going to look at the future hope kind of thing. So
Now,
I think
not yet that you brought up.
Yeah, I think it's a like a trifecta, all working all the time, all at the same time, all in constantly. I think it is, to my generation, your generation, and below, everybody else stuffed it so much that now everybody is in therapy.
There's so many people now talking about being diagnosed with this or trauma, or in some ways it's a good thing that everyone's
Yeah.
not a good thing that everyone's in therapy, but at least a good thing that there's not a stigma on it as much as
Yeah,
there was.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. I do think we need it. It's not even that we need better theology. It's that we just need to make room for the theology that's already there.
Yeah.
Which is some of my best shots at it are just that. Like when I'm in a funeral officiating it, I'm it's a whole section. It's not a whole section like 20 minutes of time and now let's just pause till we all start crying together. It's to say, I put it out there and I take some time to give the idea permission and tell them verses and show people verses, like we just said, that indicate God is okay with us doing this too. We are not being unfaithful to him when we do this.
Yeah.
And then eventually we do get to the point where we also look forward. You know what? Yeah, as we come to the close of this is not the final word.
Yeah.
But right now we are going to grieve.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. My best hope with the book was that people would experience God differently than either they've been taught, thought, or been told. That was my biggest hope, because if you would go to him with your stuff, then you're probably going to find more of him than you realized, and you'll be met with the reality of who he is, not the perception of what you think he is.
Yeah.
I was hoping people would be drawn closer to God.
Yeah. How much of that do you think, when you bring up in the book, you bring up this phrase? I think you said it was John Walton. I don't know if he coined it or if that's just where you initially saw it. This retribution principle, like, do you think that's where the idea, that whole thing of God is only good, like obviously he's good all the time, but this idea of only good things happen if you like, do you think that's where that originated?
He didn't originate it. Walton didn't.
Theory or that principle
in Job, generally, I think it's human. I think human beings, I think it's been around for all of human history. Because if you look at any other religions around Israel back in the Old Testament period, in Iron Age and moving up, the creation myths they start with a dysfunction.
Yeah.
The gods create the humans to do the work that the gods don't want to do. And then the humans are there to do that work. And so then the humans offer a sacrifice to the gods so that the gods will bless them with something that the humans need or want. But if it doesn't happen, then then the humans, the only thing that they're thinking is my sacrifice must not have pleased the God. I'll up my sacrifice. I'll up the value. And that's a dysfunctional cycle. So that is the expression of the retribution principle. Like, bad things happen to bad people.
Yeah.
And the inverse is true. Good things happen to good people. And the inverse of all that must be true then too. If bad things are happening to you, you must have done something bad. And if good things have happened to you, I don't even like the word karma, but
It's basically what you're talking about.
no, it is. But karma is not, has no, it still is whatever. I guess it's Eastern or something. Karma is the same idea, right? And so the Bible, God reveals himself in the Bible as saying, I'm not capricious like that. Life is imperfect. I don't change, even though life is precious, life is fragile, and bad things will happen. It doesn't mean I did it because I was angry.
Yeah.
And so that whole retribution principle, it really got to me when I had it in a class. I feel like it's healing because we need to understand that difference about God, because it's that same thing that keeps us from him. The retribution, we approach God that way almost automatically. We don't know it, but we will do it instinctively. And so we will keep our pains from him. When taking our pains to him is the very place and direction we need to be going.
Yeah.
But because of that retribution stuff, we instinctively keep our pains from him because he's emotionally not trustworthy. Spiritually, we say, oh, they told me he's good, but emotionally, I can't trust it.
Yeah.
And it's a dysfunctional relationship. That relationship needs healing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It brings a few questions, I think, up that I'd love to get your take on.
Okay.
I didn't think of this before, but I was thinking this while you were talking right now, of the Cain and Abel dynamic then of that. Why was one sacrifice pleasing and one wasn't? And how I was thinking myself even of how we can interpret that through that idea of retribution. But in that one, the one whose sacrifice was pleasing is the one who ends up dead.
Yeah, that too. Isn't that interesting? What does that tell you? If you were to take that as God, but clearly
it's sin.
Abel had no, it's sin.
Yeah.
It's an imperfect world. Abel had no beef with God.
Yeah.
And if he did, Abel would have been, the interpretation you're saying is that would have meant that God did that. He would have been thinking God did it, but clearly Abel, bad things are going to happen to good people.
Yeah. What's that verse that he makes it rain on the righteous and wicked alike?
Yeah, that verse. That's the verse. That's the verse.
Yeah.
Don't ask me for the reference, but you're right.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. And then when I read the whole Job section in the book, you made the point of how was it that Job didn't sin? It was he didn't ask for any of his stuff back when his friends were being like, you should be mad, you should be all that stuff. But it also made me wonder if if part of it wasn't Job's vulnerability in that moment at the same time. When I think of that, of what's Satan's whole goal in that is to get Job to essentially turn his back on the Lord, be angry, and he does get angry, and he does go, "Yo, what the heck is going on?" But I wonder if it's because I've read that before and been like, "Well, he does get angry," but then I was like, does he not blaspheme the Lord though because he brings an honesty and a rawness to the Lord?
So remember, we so miss Job, and I'm not a good scholar on Job, but I have listened to quite a bit lately, or in the last couple of years, that the reason that Job's stuff matters, and this is where he didn't sin, is because That's what the whole conversation between Yahweh and the accuser was about. Have you seen my servant Job? Yes. He's righteous. He's more righteous than anyone on the earth. Does Job serve God for nothing? The implicit accusation is he serves you only because you give him all the stuff he has.
Yeah.
And so God says, fine, take all his stuff and we'll see. We'll see what's in his heart then. And so what the challenge was about the stuff. And so if Job had asked for his stuff back, if he had said, I want the stuff, then it would have proved the accuser right. And what's interesting is we don't put that whole thing together where you go, okay, it's about the stuff. He doesn't ask for the stuff. And then at the end, God gives him all the stuff again.
Yeah.
That's how he didn't sin. What's interesting, though, is because he did all the stuff that you and I would probably think is sinful.
Yeah.
You're doing this to me. I don't deserve this. I'm not the one who has the problem. You do. He actually went after God really hard.
Yeah.
And God said to him, or God said to his friends, yet Job hasn't sinned. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And so this is the fact of he didn't put a mask on and he had it out with God.
Yeah.
That's why the retribution principle matters. That's why, because this is how we approach God with all the bad stuff that happens in our life. Our first thing is going to be, how could God have done this? Or what did I do to deserve it?
Yeah.
And we're already at when we do either one of those things, we're immediately in an antagonistic posture with God.
Yeah.
And so when we were going through this, I think I overcompensated a bit and I tried to not ask the question why. What I overlooked was that God is actually okay with us asking the question why, even though he's probably not going to give us the answer. I was trying to think obedience was to not even ask why. But why is still humanly transparent and real.
Yeah.
So if it's why to get the emotion out, great. If it's why to accuse God, he's big enough. He's big enough. Just how long do we want to fight him? Because he's not fighting us, but we are inevitably fighting him.
Yeah.
And I appreciated when someone said, it's okay to ask God why. I still didn't have to do it. I asked, but you know what, with the church going back, I asked God why about the church. I never asked God why about this, but I asked him why about the church. And you want to know what's so ironically funny? Didn't get an answer.
That checks out.
God's still faithful to himself. Like he's still consistent.
Yeah.
He
Checks out.
did not answer. Exactly. Yeah.
What do you think of, I'm not coming at this as a rebuttal to it, but I was thinking of this when I was reading that part in section 2 of because we have this moment in Deuteronomy 5 where the Lord basically says, I will visit iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation, those who hate
Oh, yeah.
but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. How do you juxtapose that with, because you could use that at the very least as part of the foundational piece to justify this whole retribution idea, where God's essentially saying, I read that and know essentially what he's saying is, if you want to make bad choices, I'm going to that's going to have a lasting effect on you and your family line. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to love me and keep my commandments, then that's also going to have a lasting effect on your family line. But I could see that being interpreted as a way of justifying this whole retribution principle idea.
A really great podcast on that is with Tim Mackey and the Bible Project.
Yeah.
They do that. They take up the very verse that you're talking about. And it's, I think how I see that now is God saying, don't take me for granted. I'm consistent in both things. Like, I'm gracious and kind to a fault, but I'm also consistent and immovable when I have made my decision. And when discipline is the only thing that is left, I will not be allowed, I will not be moved. So, like, the whole visiting the iniquity of the fathers or the generations, like, apparently, I don't profess to understand all of it, but there's a bit of contemporary expression in there that we miss. But it's also just speaking to the faithfulness of God. It's really saying, I can be trusted because I'm faithful. I wonder if the word hesed is in that passage.
Couldn't tell you. I'm looking at the ESV. I didn't pull up the Hebrew this time.
Yeah, try next time. Make sure. Come on, you're letting me down. But the point of God's steadfastness, his trustable kindness, and is in that verse. So I'm getting a little long in the tooth away from the retribution. I think that, to me, that passage is more an expression that does not support generational curses. And that passage has been used to support an idea of God bringing generational curses on people by his own hand. I'm going to punish the next generations for their forefathers' sins.
Yeah.
And here, that's not even close to in view. So I'm not sure I answered your question. I went at it more from the passage itself and not the retribution.
No, I think that's good.
As a concept.
Bible Gateway failed me. I tried to quickly pull up
Bible Hub.
Hebrew concordance.
I like the Bible Hub in that one. But anyway, yeah, we can take our Hebrew nerd out later on a different podcast.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I do want to not necessarily shift gears, but look into another part that you bring up that I've heard you do quite a bit of teaching on too, and it's really good. So if you're listening to this and you want someone to come in and rock your world, rock your church's world on inner healing, bring Rip in. Pay him good money, bring him in. But the idolatry piece of this.
Okay.
And it made me think through, like, we've talked about people avoiding pain. And then also the flip side of that is sometimes we make pain our idol.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to speak to that piece a bit as well, and how when we make that our idol too, we make it our identity. I think it's one of the ways that victim mentality stuff perpetuates and keeps us stuck and keeps us from moving forward. And the culture right now, I think, even glorifies victimhood a bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, and I was reading that, I was thinking of that.
Yeah, we glorify. It's one thing to be in therapy, but it's another to stay in therapy just as like I'm a this and fill in that adjective blank. No, I don't, because then the stuff we're in therapy for becomes an identity to us. And that's almost as worthless anyway.
We compete on our traumas. Who's more traumatized? Who's got more aces?
Exactly. So the whole imagery of the book is inside of it is the cross that's on the cover, but then the
pawn,
the Catan pawn, actually. That's where that idol came from. So it's a Catan pawn, and it's covering the light of the cross. And in fact, That's what our strongholds do to us. They lie to us about the reality, truth of God. So God must have wanted this to happen to me, or God was punishing me. And when we have an idol like that, it does two things. It blocks the light of the truth of God, and the truth is expressed. The cross is the center point of history, not mathematically, but historical importance. The cross is the uttermost, most important thing, let's say, aside from the resurrection, but the suffering sacrifice that Jesus took in our place expresses everything that we need to know. And so then that is blocked by this idol that we have in our life. And then the thing that the idol does is it enslaves us to have to make sure to continually serve it and prop it up, feed it with the same information again and again, basically never ending. Just stay there.
Yeah.
When we start to, and so that's an entrapment, that's to be enslaved by the idol. And that's a form of idolatry, because now we're living to sustain this thing instead of living for God and living toward him into his purposes for our life. And that's where your identity piece comes in.
Yeah.
So then I try to make the point of, well, how do we tear these idols down? Is to progressively begin to align our thoughts and our truth with the truths of God's word, and reject the lies, renounce the lies that we've been cultivating and propping this idol up with. So let's use Annemarie as an example. The idol would have been guilt. One would have been, I deserve to be this because I did something that I'm only worthy of guilt. Now I have to feed that thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the light of the cross would actually say, I do not hold you guilty for this. And so you are still, the truth is you're not guilty. The truth of identity is then anything like, you're a daughter of the King.
Yeah.
I love you. I'm proud of you. I have plans for you. And that we live unto that, and we live to pursue that truth, not this fake truth that sits in the way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just, that was stuff that I thought, that's why it's in the book, because it was just, to me, it was incredibly powerful. And probably some of it came from working it out with your dad, not the healing part, but that stronghold stuff. It just, God used all these different things. And one of it was listening to the Eric Metaxas show. And when Hugh Ross was on there years ago, in probably 2017, and they were talking about an eclipse that was going to happen. And Hugh Ross used the word, the occulting event is going to last for 2 minutes and 47 seconds. And
he went, where are the people with the hoods?
Yeah, that's what I did in my mind. I was sitting there at work and I'm like, occulting. He said occulting, like, in my world, that's what you just described. But he said occulting. And as soon as I started to think about that for a moment, all of a sudden, the idea of the robber from Catan, from Settler's Game, I saw it superimposed over the cross. And I was like, oh. And so that, again, that picture never left me. And I'm surprised the publisher never got me to get permission to use the image of from Catan.
Don't say it out loud, man. Don't say that out loud.
No, because now they'll come for me.
40 of my listeners now are gonna
exactly
report you.
hey, this dude. So, yeah, but it's just, to me, it's a very helpful image. That's the work we do in setting captives free.
Yeah.
And our pain and our traumas and the lies we believe about God from them, they enslave us. And part of the work is not about casting out demons and the perception of some great man or woman of God. It's just set captives free and then go home. No fanfare, no notoriety. Just go do the work of the kingdom, set captives free, and go home.
Sounds nice.
Well, it sounds nice, and it's really more an expression of stop building your own notoriety.
Yeah.
We're all sons and daughters of God who are sent to do this. So just go do the work of the kingdom, and let's not, maybe the next generation of people can stop looking to build their own platform.
We'll see. I don't know. It's been going on for 2,000 years. So.
I know, exactly. I know, it's true. It's true. Yeah. But hopefully that image, if people were to read the book, hopefully it would they would connect with it and see and have a God moment of, oh my gosh, that's an idol in my life. I've been propping that up.
Yeah. Yeah. You close out the book with a bunch of testimonies. You have some friends and folks that you have in there who share their stories, and then you actually had the kids, and you and Annemarie read a little section, and
Yeah.
you give a little follow-up. And I thought that was really cool because it was the other side of the pain for me. At least when I was reading it, it was like, it was seeing the other side. There is actually another side. You can get there. And what it brought to my mind as I was reading it and then reflecting back to the beginning of the book was how powerful the testimony is. And it was this thing popped in my head of went on this journey of significant trauma into going through the process of being raw and honest and bringing pain to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And then the superpower at the end of that, so to speak, is testimony. This is what the Lord did. This is what we walked through. It sucked. It was horrible. But here we are. Look at what the Lord can do and look what the Lord has done. And I guess I have two questions. One being, how did that play out? Because I want to be sensitive, but it's the gist that I got knowing you guys is you all went through your own process with this whole thing. Like your journey didn't look like Annemarie's journey, even though parts of it were overlapped, and it didn't look like the kids' journeys. Was there a point where you got somewhere in the journey where you were like, I can give some testimony away now? And did that unlock any expedition to the process for the rest of the family? And then two, have you guys gotten to a point now where you're finding that testimony is easier to give away to folks?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. To the second question, yes, quite. Now I can share, and it's almost more oppressive for the person that's hearing it for the first time than it is for me. They'll sit there and say, oh my gosh, you lost a child. I'm so sorry. They feel overly bad in this moment now than I feel in this moment.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we can give that. I'm always actually, whenever I hear of something like this or a pretty deep and significant trauma, if I have a road in, I'll always offer, hey, if they want to call, or if I can call them or whatever and chat, because I can give away the be present, not the it'll get better one day. I don't give that one away. We got to walk there. As far as the testimonies and stuff, yes, we all walked through it differently. Annemarie and I walked through it differently. she took she took the pregnant route, and I took the straight through. God's not disappointed with her compared to me. Hers just lasted longer. Mm. And probably had some other things involved in it. The kids, they were like pulling for it. They knew I was writing the book, and they were like really cheering for me to get the book. And then I said, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you'd all write something. Yeah. Because I don't want to tell people we're all in an amazing spot. I just want to show them where we are. And I said, be real, be wherever that is, be real. And I think that the testimonies that each of them wrote for their brother is really beautiful, each in their own ways. They honored their brother in each of their own ways. Addie's was almost the most unique because she's the youngest, has zero memory of him. So she mourns, and she says it, she mourns someone that she doesn't even know. Yeah. And when none of us have that experience. And she mourns, I have to sit and listen to my family talk about someone that I can't relate to them. But I have grief because I'm in the family and I still went through it. And I've grown up with this thing, going through this thing. So hers was even really unique. So what did happen was, as the kids got older too, like in the last 5 years, they've at different times within probably the last 5 years, all more directly addressed the issue of losing their brother. And that therapy for them has helped them as well. So I wanted to share the testimonies because I was positing something this is a beneficial thing to do. And I wanted to show whether it was valid or not. And so with the testimonies, I was doing my best to show people, yeah, when you get through it, or when you choose to go through it, that's the better choice, as opposed to stuff it down and avoid it. And then now I'll come back to us, not to say we're this good, we're great, and everything is perfect now. I actually tried to give a very real and honest reflection where we are. Like, here's where Gabe is, here's where Addie is, here's where Kaylee is, here's where Blake is, here's where Annemarie and I are. But what's really interesting is, as we've continued to take this approach with our lives, not just on Aiden, but with anything else, our whole family is tighter than the day that we completed the book. We're tighter than the day that the book came out. We're more close, we're bonded, we're more closely unified, and have healthier relational interactions. We'll bump up against each other, we'll get in each other's face and say something wrong, and then eventually we'll come back around and say, you know what, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Now, we tried to do that before, but we're quicker, and I think we're healthier, and we're definitely better off for it. And we're further along. Like, when the book came out, when I started writing the book, we had no grandchildren. Today we have 2. And everybody's close. Everybody's living close. It's just, they're struggling in normal life, not struggling because of this. And I think that's a big win. And it's, again, a testimony to God, because life's still going to happen. I can't deal with that. I can't or control that. Yeah. But none of us are held back now because of this tragic event. Yeah. And we could have been. for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I look at you guys again and said it several times over the last few weeks. You guys are my heroes.
Hmm.
Having seen it, now read way more than I knew before. When I look at you guys, the thing that strikes me is you went in.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of people don't choose to go in. They don't choose to put their head down and say, "We're going to go in and do the work." And understanding in seasons that looked different and it wasn't easy, and there were times where I know you guys, or I'm sure you wanted to run away or it felt overwhelming, but you stayed in, and that's powerful. That's, again, I look at that and I'm like, I don't know that I could do that. And it's I'm rambling. I can't say enough. It's just I'm glad to know you guys and glad to know your story.
Well, it was very kind. I'm honored by your kind words. And I know I receive it in the sense that I know obviously it's totally heartfelt and it's very kind. This is where I'll probably hit with a cliche, and so forgive me, but you said, well, I probably couldn't get through that. You could, because God's grace. And there we have the cliche. It's the true cliche, but it's
Would it be a
true.
Christian podcast if you didn't hit us with one?
But I want to be real too. I think as Christians, we should try to express some humility in that, man, sometimes we're our own worst enemies with this bullcrap cliches and stuff. I was going to say something a little stronger, but bullcrap is enough.
I appreciate it. I don't have to put a disclaimer up then.
Yeah, exactly. This guy was a pastor. Not is a pastor.
I don't have to put the little E.
Please excuse the language.
On the episode. Yeah.
But you know what? When we lost Aiden and I read a couple books, they really were very good. They were well intentioned. They all did the tell the story part, which I decided to do in just part one. And I tried to take a different approach, which is part two. And then the testimony validate, which is part three, validates part two.
Yeah.
All other books that I've read, either they psychologically deal with grief, or here's the narrative of our story, and it was really bad, and God's really good. Those are all true things. I just tried to put in the middle of it. Here's the path for anything. The path is go to it. And so that, you know what, if anything happened, you would. If you went straight through it with God. Because God's good. And that's the thing about life that he has put in place. We go through the pain. Look at Jesus. Pain is never permanent unless we protect it. So Jesus went straight through the cross. And then he rose up 3 days later. It's not permanent. But it will last as long as we protect it. And if we do, we're enslaved to it.
Yeah.
And therefore, we all, with God walking with us, could truly go through any of it.
Yeah.
And then the one other thing that matters is God doesn't compare our pains. He cares about each one of them. Yeah. So I tried to leverage what people tell me is the worst. but I don't put it up there in the book as this is the worst. Other people can say that. I'm not going to try to say that. But if you think that it is, if someone thinks that it is, then we got through it, then hopefully what the reader recognizes is that if theirs wasn't comparatively as bad, maybe they'll be inspired to trust God to start walking through their own.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, that's good, man. I had the thought when you were sharing Jesus going to the cross, going straight into pain. To be Christian cliche with that too, when you look at the resurrection and you have that first moment of him with the disciples, he carries the scars, then asks them to touch him. The testimony of the scars becomes faith for them.
Yeah.
You know, he's good. It's powerful.
Yep. Very true.
Yeah, man. I guess I just have one other question. I asked your pre-roll, but I didn't get the answer. How has this helped you be a Cowboys fan?
I'd take my pain to Jesus.
That's all right. I'm a Jets fan, man.
You have it worse.
Yeah.
Comparatively, you have it worse in this case. At least we've won a few. You only won one this year. And
I don't know if I'm happy or upset about that.
Yeah, I know. So yes, Jesus is willing to carry your griefs and sorrows. He's willing to carry your Jets' griefs and sorrows.
I don't know, man. It sure seems like he said I can't help.
And I have found him trustworthy to carry my Cowboys' griefs and sorrows.
Yeah. Well, man, I can't say enough. Just love you guys. Appreciate you, your story. Why don't you tell us again where we can get the book? You also have a podcast I think is going to be launching again soon. Book?
We'll see. Okay. We'll see. It's up to Blake, but you can find some podcasts on Discovering God Pod on YouTube, and where me and my friend Jeff do some biblical theology and whatnot. And the book, you can find the book Shattered and my name on Amazon, and also at Life Rich Publishing. So, yeah. All right. Happy for people to buy it.
Well, yeah, Christmas is coming up. What better to give away as gifts
than a grief book?
But yeah, man, love you. Would you pray us out?
Yeah. Jesus, thank you for how good you are. Father God, you are so faithful, and your grace truly is enough. And I pray, Lord, for anyone listening, that they would be challenged to bring to you griefs, sorrows, traumas, pains that may be long standing in their life, that they may have been long avoiding, and that they would decide to start to go to it and to go through the work that it is to process and get healing from pain. Lord, as they do, may they meet you and come to know more of you than they thought they knew, because you are truly good. And even though it's a testimony, it's more impactful to go through the experience. And we need to experience your goodness, not just hear about your goodness. So help us, Lord, to do that, to bring our griefs, pains, and sorrows to you, and to know experientially of your goodness, your kindness, and your love. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I appreciate you. Lots of love.
Yeah, man. Blessings. Love you guys, okay?